Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something truly mind-bending: black holes.
Definitely some of the strangest things out there in the cosmos. Powerful, mysterious, almost unbelievable.
Yeah, unbelievable is right. I mean, even Einstein wasn't totally convinced at first, was he?
He wasn't.
Yeah.
Which is wild, considering his work laid the foundation.
Exactly. So today we're going to unpack what they are, where they come from, and, what they actually do in the universe based on the latest science.
And we know you want to get the key info quickly, but properly, without feeling overwhelmed.
That's the plan. We're using excerpts from that great Novier documentary, Black Hole Apocalypse, as our guide for this deep dive.
It's a fantastic source, really highlights how these things push physics to its absolute limits. Our goal is to sort of pull out the core ideas, understand why they matter, without getting totally lost in the weirdness.
Okay, let's jump in. When we say black hole, what is that exactly? Because the documentary says straight up they're not like normal objects.
That's the crucial starting point. They aren't things in the way a star or planet is a thing. Fundamentally, a black hole is a place, a region in space-time.
Or a region where gravity has just gone completely off the chart.
Pretty much, yeah. It's so intense, so concentrated, that once you cross a certain boundary, nothing can escape. Not even light.
And that's the event horizon, right? The point of no return.
Exactly.
The documentary also talks about infinite density, a singularity, no beginning or end. That's tough to get your head around.
It really is. The singularity is supposedly where all the mass is crushed into, well, zero volume, infinite density.
But no beginning or end, what does that mean?
It basically means our current physics, like general relativity and quantum mechanics, they just sort of break down there. We don't have the tools yet to describe what is happening at that point. It's one of the biggest mysteries.
So it's not just super dense, it's a place where dense doesn't even make sense anymore?
You could put it that way, yeah. Our concepts fail us.
Okay, so if the center is incomprehensible, what about the effects around it? The documentary shows light bending, time slowing down, and that spaghettification idea.
Right. Those are the observable consequences of that extreme gravity warping spacetime. The light bending is fascinating. Light has to follow the curve of space. You get things like gravitational lensing.
Where you can see distorted images of things behind the black hole.
Exactly. And time dilation, the stronger the gravity, the slower time ticks relative to somewhere with weaker gravity. It's a real effect predicted by Einstein.
And spaghettification sounds unpleasant.
Hey, yeah, it would be. It's because the pull on, say, your feet would be so much stronger than the pull on your head if you fell in feet first. The difference in gravity stretches you out.
Like spaghetti. Got it. Not a gentle ride.
Definitely not. And that stretching highlights how different gravity is up close compared to Newton's simpler idea.
Right, so this whole idea is tied up with how we understand gravity. Newton described it, but Einstein really changed the game. How did that lead to black holes?
Well, Newton told us how gravity worked, like the force between objects, but not what it was.
Okay.
Einstein's general relativity said gravity isn't really a force pulling things, it's the shape of space-time itself being curved by mass and energy.
The classic bowling ball on a rubber sheet analogy. Mass makes a dip and things rolling nearby follow the curve.
Precisely. An apple falls because it's following the straightest path through curved space. Orbit is just falling sideways fast enough.
Okay, so Einstein publishes this theory.
And incredibly, just weeks later, Carl Schwarzschild, while serving in World War I, no less, finds a mathematical solution to Einstein's equations for a concentrated mass. And his math predicted this boundary, the event horizon, a point of no return.
Even though Einstein himself was a bit doubtful.
Yeah, he was initially quite skeptical that such a thing could actually form in nature, found the implications a bit too weird, perhaps.
That's amazing. So this theoretical oddity, how do they actually form? The documentary points to dying stars.
Right. The most common kind, stellar black holes, come from the death of really massive stars. We're talking stars starting out at least maybe 10 times the mass of our sun.
And stars are powered by fusion, right? Balancing gravity.
Exactly. Fusion in the core pushes outwards, gravity pulls inwards. It's a balancing act for millions or billions of years.
But what happens when a massive star runs out of fuel?
Massive stars can fuse heavier and heavier elements, up to iron. But fusing iron costs energy instead of releasing it.
Ah, so the outward push stops.
Bang! Fusion stops in the core, gravity instantly wins. The core collapses catastrophically fast.
And that triggers the supernova?
Right. The collapse rebounds, and the outer layers of the star are blasted outwards in a huge explosion. A supernova.
A spectacular death. But what's left behind?
If that collapsed core is still massive enough, the number is usually around 3 times the mass of the sun, then nothing, absolutely nothing we know of, can stop gravity from crushing it down further.
All the way down to that singularity point.
That's the idea. Crushed into a black hole. And it was actually John Wheeler in the 60s who popularized that name, black hole.
Before that, they were just, what, frozen stars or something?
Various names, yeah, collapsers. But black hole really stuck. And finding neutron stars, those are also collapsed cores, just not quite massive enough to become black holes that gave us confidence these extreme collapses really happen.
Okay, so stars collapse, might form black holes. But how do you find one? If light can't escape, what do you look for? The documentary used that Yankee Stadium analogy.
That's a great way to think about it. You can't see inside the stadium, but you see the crowds, the lights, the traffic, all the effects around it.
So you look for the gravitational effects of the black hole on its surrounding.
Exactly. And this is where radio and X-ray astronomy became crucial. Suddenly, we could see the universe in wavelengths beyond visible light, see these really high-energy processes happening.
Which leads us to Cygnus X1. That seems like a really key early discovery.
Absolutely pivotal. In the 70s, astronomers like Paul Merton were looking at these X-ray sources. Cygnus X1 was a bright one in the constellation Cygnus.
And the idea was to look for a binary system, a star orbiting something invisible.
Precisely. Find a normal star you can see, but watch it wobble as if it's orbiting something massive you can't see, something that's also giving off X-rays.
And they detect that wobble using the Doppler shift, like the sound of a siren changing pitch.
Exactly like that, but with light. As the visible star orbits, its light shifts slightly blue when it moves towards us and slightly red when it moves away.
And they saw this happening with the star near Cygnus X1.
They did. Merton found the visible star was orbiting something every 5.6 days. The next step, the really crucial one, was figuring out the mass of that unseen companion.
Because if it was too massive to be a neutron star,
then it pretty much had to be a black hole. The estimates based on the orbit suggested the unseen thing was maybe 6 times the mass of the sun.
which is well above the limit for a neutron star.
Way above. So strong evidence for a black hole. But, you know, it was still a pretty radical claim back then. There was definitely skepticism.
And the famous bet between Kip Thorne and Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, classic story. Thorne bet it was a black hole. Hawking bet against it, partly, some say, so he wouldn't be disappointed if it wasn't one.
That's brilliant. And Hawking eventually conceded, right?
He did in 1990. The evidence just kept mounting.
But even then, there were maybe some uncertainties in that mass estimate. That's where Mark Reed's later work came in, using that VLBI technique.
Right. Very long baseline interferometry. It's incredible. You link radio telescopes across the globe.
Like creating one giant Earth-sized telescope.
Essentially, yes. It
Yeah.
gives you incredibly sharp vision. Reed's team used it to measure the distance to Cygnus X1 really, really precisely using parallax.
It's like holding your thumb out and blinking your eyes to see it shift.
Exactly that principle, but measuring tiny shifts against background stars as Earth orbits the sun. Getting the distance right was key.
And with a better distance, they got a better mass calculation.
Much better. They pinned down the distance at about 6,000 light years, and that locked in the mass of the black hole at around 15 times the mass of our sun.
15 solar masses. Definitely not a neutron star. Case closed, pretty much.
That really solidified it. Cygnus X1 became the first confirmed stellar black hole.
Wow. So if we could, hypothetically visit Cygnus X1, what would that system look like? The documentary painted quite a picture.
It would be wild. You'd have the black hole itself, this sphere of perfect darkness, but around it, a swirling, super hot disk of gas, the accretion disk.
Where's that gas coming from?
It's being ripped off its companion star. There's a massive blue supergent star orbiting with the black hole, and the black hole's gravity is just stealing its outer layers.
And that disk gets incredibly hot.
Millions of degrees. Friction in the swirling gas heats it up, making it glow fiercely in X-rays. That's the X-ray source they detected first.
And sometimes there are jets, too.
Often, yeah. Powerful jets of particles shooting out from the poles of the black hole at near light speed. We still don't fully understand how they're launched, but they're incredibly energetic.
An amazing, violent system. Okay, so that covers stellar black holes. But then there are these other monsters, supermassive black holes at the centers of galaxies. How did we figure those out? Starts with quasars, apparently.
Right, quasars.
Yeah.
Back in the early 60s, they were just these weird point-like radio sources. Looked like faint stars, but weren't quite right.
What was Martin Schmidt's big discovery about them?
He looked at the spectrum of light from 3C273, and realized the spectral lines were familiar, but shifted hugely towards the red end of the spectrum.
A massive redshift, which
It
means
means they are incredibly far away and moving away from us incredibly fast because the universe is expanding. These were some of the most distant objects ever seen at the time.
and they were also incredibly bright, right? Too bright for just stars.
Way too bright. They were outshining entire galaxies. The only energy source powerful enough seemed to be matter falling into truly enormous black holes. Millions or billions of solar masses heating up an accretion disk to unbelievable temperatures.
So quasars were like beacons signaling these giant black holes in the early universe.
Exactly. That was the first real hint that black holes came in sizes way beyond just collapsed stars.
Which brings us closer to home, the center of our own Milky Way. Andrea Gheze's work tracking stars there.
Yeah, absolutely groundbreaking work. Ghez and her team used the Keck telescopes with adaptive optics to get super sharp images.
Cutting through the atmospheric blur.
Right. And they painstakingly tracked individual stars orbiting the very center of the galaxy, Sagittarius A, over decades.
And these stars were moving fast.
Unbelievably fast, whipping around an invisible point on tight elliptical orbits, some getting incredibly close.
And by mapping those orbits, just like with Cygnus X1, you can calculate the mass of the central object.
Precisely. The speeds and shapes of those orbits told them there had to be something there, with about 4 million times the mass of our sun packed into a tiny space.
4 million suns. And the only thing that fits is a supermassive black hole.
That's the conclusion. Sagittarius A is our galaxy's central supermassive black hole. It's amazing detective work, mapping the invisible by watching the visible.
And it turns out we're not special, right? Hubble found these things are probably in most galaxies.
Yeah, projects like the Nuclear Survey looked at the centers of many other galaxies. They studied how stars were moving near the cores.
Using techniques related to Schwarzschild's original work?
Sort of, yeah, analyzing the stellar dynamics. And they found strong evidence that pretty much every large galaxy has a supermassive black hole at its heart.
Like Andromeda's 100 million solar masses. That's huge.
Staggering. The documentary mentioned if you put Andromeda's black hole in our solar system, it would swallow everything out past Mars. And it's spinning so fast, its accretion disk is warped.
Just incredible scales. But it raises a big question. How do you get a black hole that massive? Stellar collapse doesn't seem big enough.
That's the puzzle. 4 million, 100 million, billions of solar masses. You can't just make that from one star collapsing.
So how do they grow? Accretion seems obvious, just pulling in gas.
Accretion is definitely part of it. Gas and dust fall in through the accretion disk, adding mass over time. But there are also more dramatic events.
Like those tidal disruptions, where a star gets too close?
Exactly. Tidal disruption events, or TDEs. If a star wanders too close, the black hole's gravity rips it apart, shreds it.
And the black hole has a big meal, causing a flare.
A huge flare, often seen in X-rays, as the stellar debris gets pulled in and heated up. We've seen these happen, so that's another way they grow.
Cosmic demolition derby. But even with accretion and eating stars, there's that timing problem with the early quasars, right? They got huge very quickly.
That's a major headache for the models. Seeing these billion solar mass black holes powering quasars less than 1 billion years after the Big Bang, how do they grow that fast?
Is there, like, a speed limit to how fast they can eat?
There is, yeah. It's called the Eddington limit.
Yeah.
Basically, as stuff falls in and heats up, the radiation it emits pushes back outwards.
Light pressure, essentially.
Exactly. That pressure can counteract gravity and limit how quickly the black hole can actually swallow more material. It puts a cap on the accretion rate.
So if they can't just eat faster, how did the early ones get so big so soon? The documentary mentioned direct collapse.
That's one leading idea. Maybe, in the very early universe, conditions were right for enormous clouds of primordial gas, maybe hundreds of thousands of solar masses, to collapse directly into a massive black hole, skipping the formed star's first step.
So you start with a much bigger seed.
Right. Instead of starting with a 10 solar mass black hole from a star, maybe you start with a 100,000 solar mass seed. That gives you a huge head start on growing to billions.
That makes sense. A way around the speed limit issue. Okay,
Yeah.
So they form, they grow. What role do they actually play? Are they just sitting there at the center?
It seems not. There's more and more evidence that galaxies and their central supermassive black holes sort of grow up together. They co-evolve.
How so? Is there a connection between the black hole size and the galaxy's size?
There is a remarkably tight correlation, actually, between the mass of the central black hole and the mass or velocity dispersion of the stars in the galaxy's central bulge. bigger bulge, bigger black hole.
So they influence each other somehow, like feedback.
That's the idea. Feedback mechanisms. As the black hole feeds, all that energy released from the accretion disk radiation, powerful jets.
The stuff we saw might be happening at Cygnus X1.
Exactly, but on a vastly larger scale for supermassive ones. That energy can blow out into the host galaxy, heating up the gas, maybe pushing it out entirely.
Which could stop new stars from forming.
It could regulate star formation, yeah, or even shut it down, completely quench the galaxy. So the black hole isn't just passively eating, it's actively shaping the evolution of its entire galaxy.
Wow, so even though they're a tiny fraction of the universe's mass?
Their energetic impact is huge. They seem to be major players in how galaxies are structured and evolve.
That completely changes the picture. Okay, looking ahead, the documentary mentions some exciting future projects. James Webb, the Event Horizon Telescope, LIGO.
Yeah, it's an amazing time for black hole science.
Mhm.
The James Webb Space Telescope is peering back into the cosmic dawn, hoping to see those first supermassive black holes forming.
Trying to catch those direct collapse seeds, maybe?
Potentially, yes. Or just understand how the first quasars lit up. Then there's the Event Horizon Telescope, that incredible global network of radio telescopes.
They're trying to actually picture the shadow of our galaxy's black hole, Sagittarius A.
That's the goal, to directly image the silhouette of the event horizon against the bright background, an incredibly ambitious project.
And LIGO, detecting gravitational waves.
That's been revolutionary. LIGO and his partners have actually heard the ripples in space-time caused when black holes merge.
Directly detecting these cataclysmic events.
It's a whole new way to observe the universe. It confirms black holes exist, lets us study their mergers, how they grow, their properties. It even won the Nobel Prize. We've also heard neutron stars merging, which might even form new black holes.
So we've gone from Einstein being skeptical about this theoretical weirdness to directly hearing them smash together across the cosmos and seeing evidence for them at the heart of nearly every galaxy. It's been an incredible scientific journey.
Absolutely. But as the documentary concludes, there are still huge mysteries. What's inside the event horizon? What happens at the singularity? Do they eventually evaporate through Hawking radiation?
So many fundamental questions remain. That idea of them slowly radiating away over unimaginable timescales, it just adds another layer of profound strangeness.
It really does. And it makes you wonder, considering how much energy they pump out, how they shape galaxies, maybe they're not just weird side effects. Maybe they're actually key players in the whole cosmic story.
It's a provocative thought, isn't it? Despite being a small part of the mass, their energetic influence is immense. What else are we going to uncover? How much more will these discoveries challenge our basic ideas about space, time, reality itself? It's definitely going to be exciting to watch.